And that is to give Chuck the opportunity of maybe channeling the Setu here today,
Sure.
if he is so inclined, of course.
Well, and I'm not sure what, I'm familiar with you guys to some degree. I don't have a lot of physical familiarity with Bruce. I'm not quite sure what his experience is. I know for me, I've expressed it to these guys. It's kind of like, as you were saying, I know you alluded to that, Bruce, you're channeling all the time, but I kind of find that, my, whatever you want to say, my higher me, my whatever, in the last while kind of is there all the time. And so when this occurs, uh, it, it it's a pretty simple shift because it's not like it's so foreign.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a little different than Jane and some other individuals. I'm much more in attendance than what happens with some individuals, and a lot of the a lot and a bit of especially before you came in, what was shared with these guys was being flavored by my my alter ego, quote unquote.
I know it well. I lived many years with a trance
Yeah,
medium, so I'm tracking. You do your thing.
yeah, cool. So we would like to take the opportunity to greet all of you once again. And as we always do, to express to you our gratitude for the interaction that we have with you in this moment. Because, of course, it lends so very nicely to our exploration. So we thought we would begin with the idea that Chuck touched on a little earlier, which is the vastness of who and what you are. And we'll use the word struggle in the moment, the struggle that you have sometimes to, in fact, understand that. And the ways that you utilize within your physical life to attempt to open doors to yourself, to give you some hints of the vastness of what you actually are. And you use many tools to do this. You're all familiar, of course, of the concept that you are the one that's creating the reality that you're experiencing. So, if you stand at an ocean port and you have this immense ship in front of you, you are the one that creates the ship. You create the water that you see. You create the docks that you find yourself standing on. You create the equipment that's around you. If you find yourself at an airport and the largest type of jet that you physically make is in front of you, you're the one creating that jet in that moment. Now, of course, it's an idea that's shared throughout the collective, but your experience of that jet is created by you. This idea applies as well to your concepts of UFOs. When a UFO shows up in your reality, it is not another entity that creates that UFO. You are creating the UFO in your experience of the reality. Many of these individuals, will utilize that term in this moment, are other aspects of your greater being. They reside within the vastness of what you are. The you of you encompasses an infinite number of dimensions, populated by aspects of consciousness, many different in ways that you could not fathom from this vantage point. When those aspects of consciousness become familiar with you, when they reach out to, in your terms, aid you in your transformation, in this time period of your transformation, they need to utilize symbols that make some sense to you. Otherwise, there is no effect. So when you create ships that you associate with them, you have to create something that makes sense to you. When you create a form that they inhabit, you need to create a shape that makes some sense to you. Otherwise, it will not have the same effect. You will be too lost in trying to figure out what it is to get the message. And this is understood by them. So they utilize symbology that means something within your experience. Otherwise, the message could not be conveyed. They could not provide you with helpfulness in that regard. Now, earlier, Ray was mentioning families of consciousness. The individuals who gather in this format are more familiar with this form of information being shared. Information that you call channeling, perhaps you call it an energy exchange. Others gain information like this in very different ways. Others can interact with a rock or a tree or the wind and get the same information that you get from the individuals that you would call Seth or Abraham or Bashar. It shows up in a different way for them, but it's similar information. Now, regardless of how that shows up, the same mechanism ensues. In other words, you will apply your beliefs to the information that's showing up. It's the nature of your existence. Your existence, this particular physical existence, is filtered through your belief systems. So all the information that you get is going to be filtered through your belief systems, regardless of how it shows up. In this, as you have interacted with individuals that have joined your form for whatever periods of times that they have, you've noticed that some of those individuals do things a little bit differently. And if you're at a point of connectivity with yourself, you'll recognize there's a different energy field to those individuals. They will approach things in different ways. And this, of course, gives you the opportunity to express acceptance of those individuals, acceptance of the differences, acceptance of the way that information shows up for them, acceptance of the idea of the way that they'll apply their beliefs to that information and how then they will configure that information to, in that moment, make sense in their life. Not that they may not change that information as they widen their own awareness, but in the moment, that's the way the information is going to show up for them. Because everything that you do is for your benefit, even if it includes others. Especially in this time period, all the things that show up in your life give you the opportunity to understand the reality around you, which is you. So to understand you in a way that you haven't understood yourself to this point. It's always the opportunity to understand more. And this is not, as Chuck and Ray were speaking about earlier, in just an informational way. It's in a knowing way. Once you've walked out into a rainstorm and gotten soaking wet, you understand what it is to walk in the rain. When you have certain experiences on this journey, your awareness of who you are expands as a result of those experiences, even if those experiences are filtered through the beliefs that you have in this moment. Realize that the individuals, the other aspects of yourself, because again, you are vast. The other aspects of yourself that you interact with do not contain more information than you contain. They are only helping you open the doors to the information that is already yours in ways that will catch your attention, in the ways that are interesting to you, in the ways that will prod you to explore deeper and further. As beings of consciousness, if we can say it that way, you have access to all of consciousness. There is no race of beings out there that has access to more information within consciousness than you do. You connect like they do with the entirety of consciousness. In your transition period, you would utilize the connections that you have with these other aspects of yourself in the various ways that you will to help you to open those doors, to help you to look behind the curtains that have been blocking your view, to help you to breathe in the air that to this point you haven't breathed in, you haven't allowed yourself to breathe in, largely because there was no curiosity there. This movement of yours stimulates your curiosity, stimulates your asking of the questions, questions that individuals, let's say in your 18s or 1700s, had no interest in asking by and large. There were only a very few on your planet. Now it's a growing number of individuals because it is a global phenomenon, is it not? So we would leave you with this idea of your own vastness, the resources that are really yours already. And you'll use many ways to rediscover the ability that you have. And all the ways that you bring to yourself, they're all fine. They'll work for you for the time period that they work for you, and then you'll move on to something else. As your awareness widens, that's for Louise, as your awareness widens, you'll use others. Methods that will suit the now new you, if we can phrase it like that. Until at some point, methods will no longer be necessary because your experience of yourself will have changed. You will connect with areas of consciousness that at this point, you can't even imagine what they are. So we'll leave you with that. And we'll, of course, quite open to any inquiries you may have, anything you would like us to develop to a greater degree as well.
Well, you have brought me to a place that matches very well where I have been the last couple of days. And I had an experience with a consciousness that describes itself as coming from the space between stars, never having had any form, but being, if you want to call it that, a frequency civilization. And it sort of identified me as some voice bearing node. And what was interesting to me is that it posed a question to me as to how I perceive the realm that I'm in. To which I kind of answer in the form of geometry that was reassembling patterns that are in the blueprint for this realm, shifting things. But anyway, that's very widening for me. And I really appreciate the message that you have given. And
So
the
as
idea,
you
yes,
as you widen yourself, as you pull back the curtains to areas of yourself that you haven't explored before, these types of interactions will occur. Perhaps we can say more frequently. And as you translated the energy that arrived, maybe we can use the idea of on your doorstep, your response that you provided immediately provided for those aspects all that was necessary. So you're aware that many times when you are interactive with individuals that share information, that there's activity, shall we say, in the background that's going on, changes that are occurring. And so this is part of what this interaction is about for you as well, that there are changes, awakenings occurring within you that will begin to make themselves physically observable. The idea with these types of things is to not to attempt to compartmentalize the interaction, but to allow that interaction to work with you in the way that it's going to work with you, to bring shifts about in you that you will recognize. And it's not necessarily even so important that you can say, yes, this particular increase in my sensitivity, my awareness, whatever you might want to call it, is due to that. That's not important. What's important is just to embrace whatever changes occur. Where it comes from really doesn't make any difference. And this is helpful for you because, again, this is something that all of you have become quite familiar with doing, is the idea of cause and effect. This happened, and then this effect occurred, which is not really the way that it happens. So loosening your grasp on which interaction you had brought about which effect in you is something that will, shall we say, bear fruit for you as well.
thank you. I am humbled by the message, and I'm humbled by all that this moment brings me.
And in that regard, to use your language, we cannot have this interaction without being again, in your language, humbled by this interaction with you, if you understand our meaning. In other words, there are
We
no
do.
levels
Yes,
within
I
these
understand.
interactions.
I
It
understand.
is a sharing of equals.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to say to you. Always a pleasure to make your acquaintance again. I'm sorry, Luis, did you have something else to add? I guess, okay. I have a question about once we assume our light bodies have the Earth's ascension, whatever you want to call it, and telepathy is activated amongst our younger children and others who are interested. How will that affect our languages on the Earth? And if you could provide some kind of timeline, because I would assume that it would migrate to something which would be more cohesive, like an individualized language to allow us to communicate easier with the extraterrestrial races and hybrid children. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Your utilization of language on your planet has been part of your, perhaps we can call it your experimentation, your experience of the idea of separation. You mentioned when Bruce first became part of the gathering tonight that you enjoyed individuals who've explored. One of the reasons why that is true is because many times when you're in conversations with an individual like that, it's not, maybe we'll use the word, as much work to have the conversation. There's an exchange of meaning that goes on when two individuals who've explored themselves to a large degree, when they're interacting, there's much meaning that's translated between them without the need for words. You'll find that their conversations are much more abbreviated, yet there's a great deal of information that's been shared. This is what will happen on your planet to a greater degree. You will not need to utilize language in the way that you utilize language any longer. You will utilize language if you choose to utilize language. The idea of different languages will be a moot point at that point in time, because again, it will be a place where you will telepathically, shall we say, have an understanding of what's being conveyed by the other individual. Timelines are variable, as they are in all things, and it will be a personal thing for each individual here. For Luis, and we're just going to pick randomly here. This is not to say that this is what's going to happen. To Luis, it might happen in a 15-year time period. To Bruce, it may happen in a 25-year time period. To Ray, it may happen in a 6-month time period. Now, none of that is to say that that's the way it's going to happen. But again, you're creating your experience of the reality. So when this happens for you, will be when it happens for you. And it may very well seem as though that's when it happened for the entirety of the society. But it has everything to do with how you want to move through your experience. And a faster way is not a better way. It's a different process. It's a different exploration than another way is. And so time periods, again, we understand that it's one of those ideas that coming from the experience that you're very, we'll use the word familiar to you, it's one of those concepts that seems very important to you when things are going to happen. If I do this, will that occur? How much am I doing this will lead me to have this experience? You've had others that have suggested to you that the physically focused mind loves to think in those ways. It loves to control the flow of time. It loves to control the idea of when things will happen. Now, there's nothing wrong with the physically focused mind. You've utilized it to have some very interesting experiences. But as you move into a greater understanding of who you are, your fascination with when things will occur will fall by the wayside. So that will be our answer.
I especially like that last part about fascination with when things will occur. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that answer.
You're quite welcome.
Bruce, you have a question? Yes.
Thank you. What would you say about the idea that the most magical words that exist are I am?
The first thing we would do is we would explore the idea of the definition of magical. Because the definition of magical to most individuals means something that is different enough from what is common to have a special level of importance paid to it. But that only comes from a particular perspective of the experience. When you understand that all expressions of consciousness are as magical as any expression of consciousness, then the idea of what is magical and what is not becomes, again, a moot experience. Many individuals on your planet like to utilize the word divine as well, as if there is some separation between what can be divine and what is not. If all is consciousness, what then is not divine, if you want to utilize that word? Or is anything divine? We could say it like that. So, of course, the idea of I am expresses the totality of consciousness. And that within this movement that you're all within, the reality of knowing yourself as all of consciousness will move closer, shall we say. So many times, even in the questions that individuals will ask, the ways that you have used language on your planet and the way that you consider words, the ideas that you associate with the words, sometimes are so very familiar to you that you walk right beyond them. You don't see what it is you're doing with your perception of your reality because you are so used to it. Again, it's not that it's wrong at all, but it provides a particular type of an experience. So we will certainly expand on that if there's more that you'd like.
That was my feeling. Please do.
This is something that all of you will do as well. As you consider the words that you use, the words that make up your language, the meanings that those words have, as you may recognize, looking, shall we say, back, maybe in the last 80 years or so, and how in this country, in the United States, you have folded new words into your language, and how those words and the meanings that they were given in other cultures aided you in your expansion of your thought processes, allowed your ideas to explore in ways that you hadn't in terms of time prior to that. This will be a phenomenon that will continue. You will utilize and understand how language many times plays a role in packaging your experience. And so as you move into a freer understanding of yourself, along the lines of some of what Ray was expressing, your language, your use of language will also change, because you will no longer package yourselves in the same way. And so the language that you use will be a reflection of that. And so the idea then of something that is miraculous, something that is out of the ordinary, will take on an entirely different meaning than what those words have had for, in terms of time, many centuries.
You were focusing on the words magic.
Indeed, magic and miraculous.
Would you focus on the words I am?
I am, indeed. And of course, it's quite simple, is it not? You are. And if we were going to speak in a Zen master type of way, we might say, what else is there to say about that concept? You are. What are you not?
Feel free to enjoy yourself saying more about it.
It is part of your exploration, is it not? To have concepts and ideas show up in association with words, to explore those concepts and ideas, again, in association with the movements that you're all going through, to reach deeper into yourself with these ideas, with this phrase, I am. What does this phrase mean? Get inklings through various cultures. You get ideas, you explore the ideas. You're exploring yourself as you do that. I am. What does I am mean? How is I am expressed? It's expressed like this, as one of the infinite ways that I am is expressed. It's expressed in total validity as this. It's a race of beings that have seemingly forgot who and what they are. I am expresses itself as fully in that way as it does in any other way. It's only within the experience that the experience is judged. Within the experience, you cannot see all of what the experience is. You do not see the changes that it brings to all that you are. Yes, within the experience, you now feel constrained. That feeling constrained, we will remind you, is a new feeling. For many thousands of years, you did not feel constrained within your experience. You feel constrained only because you're moving to a different experience. That feeling of being constrained incites you to explore, excites you to explore I am. Allows, facilitates, perhaps we would rather say, within your experience, movement, exploration. you have been within your experience content within your experience for, in terms of time, long periods of time. This is no longer true. Your exploration in that regard began with what you would term technology, exploring within the environment of what you knew, what you believed to be true, and pushing that as far as you could. It was a preamble to what you are now doing, which is the actual exploration. We almost would like to withdraw that because, again, it almost means that the exploration that in terms of time you have just finished was not incredibly valuable and valid, because of course it was. But in terms of this idea of I am, it was, as you're aware, in a sense, hidden from you as you had the bulk of your physical experience. And this feeling of being constrained, this desire to move beyond this feeling of being constrained, and it being expressed in many walks of life, is about all of that. What am I? And as your transformative period comes to what we may call a close, which of course is not actually the ending of anything, as you're aware, you will have a much larger understanding of what those two words I am mean and how that's expressed. It will be from the vantage point that most seekers have at this point quite surprising to you. Because you still look to your experience to try to figure out what your upcoming experience will be. And it will fail you in that regard. We will suggest it will be quite surprising to you. And with that, we will tie up our exploration of I am. Unless, of course, there is further exploration that you have.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Ray?
Yeah, I have a question about after humanity has global extraterrestrial contact, can you tell us a few of the things which will surprise humanity most? I mean, we know there's going to be energy and the erosion of national boundaries and identities and other advances in other areas, but I know there are things which will surprise us, which are coming along, other than, like telepathy and stuff like that, but whatever you feel free to expound upon.
One of the concepts that we see the one individual that within, perhaps we will use the idea, these circles, the circle of extraterrestrial contact, who is perhaps the most prominent in that. One of the things that we are aware that they struggle with is conveying to the individuals that they interact with that this is not predominantly a physical experience in the way that many individuals still believe it's going to be. This individual has mentioned to individuals that this is a experience that will occur as they widen their awareness of who and what they are. Most individuals do not pay attention to that. Most individuals skip right beyond that. They focus instead on, again, the experience that they know, the earth that they know. This is not. We will suggest to you what your experience is going to be about. Your experience is going to be about your shift, your widening, your awareness of other dimensional individuals as you allow yourself that facilitation of yourself. Your planet will not be the same. You will not live in the same way on your planet. You will not have the same awareness on your planet. You will not consider your planet in the way that you consider your planet now. It will be considered very differently. You are not having individuals show up to save you. You have information, and we're not speaking so much to the group in front of us, but to most other individuals. You have had individuals around you now for at least a half a century that have been sharing information with you. Information to help you understand the wider nature of who and what you are. They understand, all of these individuals understand that it is not about saving you. It's not about them stepping into your experience and them altering your experience. They lead you into your experience, and they do it in the fashion that is natural for them to do that, in the way that catches your attention, in the way that excites you, in the way that gets you to explore, in the way that prompts you to ask the questions, to want to open the doors, to explore more of who and what you are. So the planet will change not so much because of individuals who will join you in your experience, but rather you will change the experience. Will they aid you in that? Yes, but think of the individuals that are already sharing information with you now. They aid you in your experience, but it's you that utilizes that information. It's your movement that opened the doors to those individuals being there in the first place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question or comment?
Much appreciative of the time and the knowledge and the wisdom. Grateful to say to, as always.
We have a deep level of enjoyment when we interact with individuals who've explored, as all of you have. It allows us to share, perhaps we'll say, layers of information that otherwise we don't frequently get to share.
We love that about you, Tisetu.
And in your
Indeed.
terms, we love that about you.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Chuck.
Yeah,
Mr.
that felt like a lot of fun.
Mr. Chuck was there all the time,
Largely, as it's
And
it's an interesting, it's been such an interesting process. So just for Bruce, just because we haven't had a chance to talk. So, there was one time where I was chatting with these guys and I kind of talked about the progression of this whole thing for myself. I began an audio podcast, maybe 2.5 years ago. I'm not sure what it was, in there someplace. And I began, and because it's an audio podcast, when I would edit it, of course, I have to listen to the whole thing. And so I would go, there would be times where I would go, I don't remember saying that, or I'm listening to me talk and I'm going, that seems different than how I typically would say things. Like there's a different energy there. And so I realized that there was another layer of me that was showing up. And then I looked back at some blogging that I used to do, and I would see it in that as well. And so I've been associated with a group that is associated with a guy out of Toronto, Canada. His name is Serge Granbois. He's shown up here a few times, and he is the name of the aspect of consciousness that he channels is termed Chris. And so I've been familiar with that for a long time. So there's a group of individuals that I've become quite familiar with. And so we get together still every Sunday in the morning. And so I asked these guys about 1.5 years ago or so, hey guys, how'd you feel if I started practicing channeling with you guys intentionally, in other words? And they said, yeah, sounds good. So I started playing with that. So after about 1 year, and I was feeling fairly comfortable doing that, it's been about a half a year now, Luis, that I joined you guys the first time.
Yeah, something like that.
Someplace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had become familiar with Ray online, various Facebook groups. And he just said, hey, we got this group that, we have individuals who are kind of like just getting into their channeling. We're kind of utilizing that as, like a little format to nurture individuals along. I said, yeah, sounds nice, And so I joined these guys, and then of course they opened up another night, which is tonight, because it was originally Thursdays. And then there's a group on Friday that I've been interacting with, and a couple others as well. And it's been nice because it helps me to become more comfortable in the whole of the process. And as I'm more comfortable in the process, then the ability to become aware of the information that floats in is easier, I guess. And the comprehension of what's attempting to be expressed shows up with it as well, in a way that it didn't at first. So I'm enjoying it. It's been really cool. And as I mentioned before, and of course, individuals have this show up in their lives in a whole variety of ways, but that dialogue is kind of like a day-long dialogue now for me. It's just there, which is very, very cool.
Yes, it is. I'm not sure how long Magic Fridays will hold up.
Yeah, I know that Janet's taking a hiatus, I think, and she's kind of been steering the boat for a while.
And Artur didn't show up for his last session last Sunday. Do we want to stop the recording now, or?
Sure,
we can do that.
we'll stop the recording. We're